when I went to college was like the first time I'd been around people that actually talked about mental health. Like I feel like I didn't have that experience growing up where people were open about it. I would just think that there was something wrong with me. I just felt different than most people, like concentrating in class, getting kicked out of class a lot because I couldn't control laughter and certain things like that.
Welcome to Latine ADHD, the podcast where cultura and ADHD meet. I'm your host, psychologist Dr. Janice Castro. Just as a reminder, this podcast and today's episode are not a replacement for therapy. Today, I'm talking with Emily Nader. Emily proves that thriving with ADHD isn't about fitting into a box. It's about building a life and body that feels like yours. She's the voice and energy behind Earth 2M, where she helps people build strength, nourish their bodies, and find balance in a way that actually works for real life. Emily blends movement, nutrition, nervous system care, and mindset shifts while staying real about her own process of adjusting, refining her rhythm, and honoring what she needs each day. In this conversation, we talk about growing up with family messages like, "You're fine," or "Just apply yourself," how ADHD showed up in Emily's life, and the tools that help her manage life on her own terms. So when you filled out the guest form, you shared that you're mixed Puerto Rican, Filipino, Lebanese, and more. And you also said that growing up, you heard things like, "You're fine," or "Just apply yourself." And I'm curious, did those messages or your family background shape how you see yourself or how your family talked about mental health or ADHD when you were growing up?
It wasn't much of a topic of conversation at all.
Mm,
Um, it's funny, like looking back, there was really no talk about mental health.
yeah.
Like when I went to college was like the first time I'd been around people that actually talked about mental health. Like I feel like I didn't have that experience growing up where people were open about it. I don't
Mhm.
know if it's just like at a certain age, maybe we just become aware or because of our experiences become aware at a certain point.
Yeah.
Um, but that was never like a topic of conversation. So I would just think that there was like something wrong with me or I just felt different than most people, like
Mhm.
concentrating in class, getting kicked out of class a lot because I couldn't control like laughter,
Mm.
and certain things like that. Um, Otherwise, like when I would come to my parents and at a certain age in high school, I wanted to be tested
Mm.
because I felt like really like connected to having ADD and ADHD. But I feel
Mm.
like the ADHD part kind of died off at one point because I had some sort of like social understanding with myself and how I was behaving. And I kind of like sat myself down and was like, I don't know if how I'm behaving is okay or like socially acceptable because I was super impulsive and like doing like crazy things. But my parents would always tell me that I was fine and that, yeah, I just needed to apply myself and that I could get better grades if I just tried harder.
Mm.
And like homework was the last thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I'd always procrastinate it until the time that I was supposed to go to bed. And then I would end up staying up super late to do my homework or like not get any sleep
Mm.
just to finish it. Or I would wake up and do it super fast in the morning before school. And yeah, and that was like normal for me. So I was like, oh, this is just how it is,
Mm.
because that's what I would tell myself. So I was like retelling myself the messages, like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I guess I'm normal. That's like what my parents would tell me, like, you're just like every other kid. And I'm like, okay, whatever that means.
Yeah. That must have been really hard to recognize that you were noticing how you felt different, but then because you're being told that you're fine or just apply yourself, you're normal, you're like every other kid, that starts to become ingrained. And then that's how
Hmm.
you engage in your own self talk whenever you
Hmm.
find yourself maybe procrastinating or struggling with maybe managing some of the impulsivity. And so when you are hearing these messages and then that's how you talk to yourself, then it becomes this cycle of like, yep, like this is just how it is. And that makes
Hmm.
it harder to seek out help or to
Yeah.
recognize like maybe this isn't just how it is. Maybe I need a different strategy.
Hmm. Yeah, they didn't want me to seek out help. I think partly because they knew that I would potentially get like a prescription, and they
Mm.
didn't want me to be doing that like at a young age.
Yeah.
And because I was under the age of 18, I had to listen to my parents and go by their rules because they would be signing everything medically.
Mm.
And partly too, I think it felt more normal because my brother was very similar in
Mm.
a way. And so it's just me and my brother growing up. Like it's
Mhm.
just us two as the kids in the family.
Yeah.
And so kind of seeing it be normal with him too, like within my family. And then us honestly kind of taking after my mom.
Mm.
Like I feel like growing older and being able to observe after learning so much for myself, being able to observe like my mom's side of the family unit, I
Yeah.
can see more patterns in behavior from that I was exhibiting that are in her family that she was told were like she was probably told was normal,
Mm.
and this is just how we are and it's gonna be hard like this and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Um, but not really thinking like that it was coming from anywhere.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. Like, how could you think it's coming from anywhere else, or that there's a maybe a bigger picture to it when everything that you're seeing around you feels very similar to how you are, and then
Mm-hmm.
it turns into like extended family and seeing similarities.
Hmm.
And if the message, across family has been this is how we are, this is normal, and who's to say like what's normal and what's not, but
Right.
when we do live in a society that caters to neurotypical folks,
Hmm.
then that normal starts to become a question of like,
Hmm.
is it, and how can you even know to question it if you're surrounded by people who are similar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it feels so chaotic, yet
Mm.
so normal at the same time. And I think
Yeah.
just, I feel like I'm accepting that even more.
Mm.
Just, it's because it is how it is in a way. And there's ways that
Yeah.
I've learned to help myself,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. There was finally a point where my younger cousin on my mom's side of the family got
Mm-hmm.
tested for ADD, ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
and the age difference between me and him is 5 years. So he got tested at a young age. I think I was still like in high school, and he got diagnosed ADHD. And I was
Mm.
like, it's in the family. It's in the family. And then his
Yeah.
mom, even my first cousin, same kind of thing. And it's funny talking about it now because it's not something that we don't talk about as much anymore like we do. I think because as a family unit we became more aware
Mm.
together, and I think I also contributed to that through leading my own experience once I finally turned 18 with
Yeah.
ADHD and being able to talk about it with my family to be like, guys, we're not normal. We're not normal. We need
Yeah.
like different kinds of tools, different kinds of attention, like for ourselves.
Yeah. And I often hear once you see something, you can't unsee it.
Hmm.
And so what I'm hearing for you is that your cousin got tested and then it trickles down to also you getting tested like after I'm sorry, you said after you were 18?
Yeah, so once I turned 18 and then I was in college and I was having a really hard time. Like in college, I was about to fail out.
Mm.
I was like, that's it. I'm gonna go get tested because I'm
Yeah.
18. I can do what I want technically. So I
Mm.
like remember that thought about being 18. I was like, oh yeah, I can go do my own medical stuff now. So
Yeah.
I went to go get tested finally. And
Yeah.
and then I was like, "See, mom and dad, I was right." And then
Yeah.
finally my brother got tested and he also had it. And yeah, so finally
Yeah.
getting some clarity.
Yeah, that clarity, I imagine, helps out a lot
Hmm.
to be able to understand yourself or your brain better. And then also noticing that being in a neurodivergent family, like folks who also have ADHD, it then can provide them the ability to also consider getting help or getting tools and strategies that can help
Hmm.
them. And sometimes I think when you don't know what you don't know, you kind of just figure it out on your own.
Hmm.
And yet, when you're able to have a conversation with your family about it and they're open then to finding out more, it helps to be able to get that clarity, like you said.
Hmm.
Um, so that leads me to my next question. When you mentioned you got tested when you were in college, because you mentioned that you were almost gonna fail, which I have seen in the research with ADHD is a lot of folks who are undiagnosed, especially who are in college, have a really hard time, whether it's like switching majors multiple times, having a hard time with grades, retaking classes, certain
Hmm.
classes or subjects being harder than others because they don't have the tools or strategies. Like it's like you're in a new culture, a new
Hmm.
bubble, right? So you're outside of your family, you're all these like adulting responsibilities start to creep up.
Hmm.
And so I'm curious what's helped you understand your ADHD and make life feel a little easier to manage?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess now, even as you were like saying that and like reflecting that question,
Mm,
I kind of thought about one of the reasons why I never thought this before, but when it comes to, or like for me at least, my experience in college, my first semester, it's not a typical routine. I feel like it was more predictable growing up from kindergarten to 12th grade because the school was pretty much the same. It's like you wake up in the morning, you go to school
mm,
for 4 to 8 hours. And then it's like the routine is very similar.
yeah.
Then going to college, my first semester, freshman, you don't really get a super favorable schedule depending on when you're able to select classes. And your schedule is kind of like all over the place. You might have
Yeah.
a class Tuesday, Wednesday, or a class Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you have evening classes and morning classes. And so I think for me, it was really all over the place. I didn't know how to manage my schedule because it was something that I just was not used to. It was so different. And then mixed with like the new environment of like being around just a ton of young adults. And I got caught up in the party scene myself. So that became another bigger challenge and on top of managing my schedule, being able to wake up on time, be in class on time, understanding how to look at all the different syllabi and everything to like
Yeah.
really make it structured for myself. Like I didn't have any of that. So what I did do, I guess once I got tested, so I was medicated, then they prescribed me,
Mm-hmm.
although I didn't know because this is my first time taking it. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel like on the medication.
Mm.
So what I was overprescribed, like way too
Oh.
much for my size. And so I ended up having another completely different experience with ADHD medication that really drove me away from it.
Oh.
But during that time that I was on the medication, I was really grateful for the ability to understand how to focus and
Mm-hmm.
what that even feels like.
Mm.
And then feeling more want to say like motivated in a way to organize things and like feel what structure is
Yeah.
and how to create that for myself and understanding the tools that did help me. So I was definitely like a planner person and I still am. Like I can't go without a planner and I use my phone calendar and
Yeah.
I have to, or I
Yeah.
will forget where I need to be and who I'm supposed to be talking to. So, like, definitely as I was just experiencing and like understanding, I feel like the diagnosis helped me solidify and understand certain tendencies that I had or really validate them for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, but not necessarily confining myself or restricting myself with those symptoms and being able to break out of that, knowing like, okay, if I have a tendency to be late, what can I do to help myself to be on time?
Mm.
So I would just start trying a bunch of new things to see like what works for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing about that experience. And, it made me sad to hear that you got too much, like it was too much of a dosage for your
Mhm.
first experience with medication. I think that's really hard, especially when you brought up that you didn't know what to expect. And I think that's the hardest part, because how are you supposed to know? Right? I think that also is important for the providers to inform their patients or clients like, this is what you can expect, or you may experience this or that. So then that way it doesn't come as a shock, or you start to
Mhm.
question, like, is it working or is it not working?
Mhm.
And what I do hear though is that while maybe there were some side effects, you mentioned that it was helpful for your focus, and you
Mhm.
notice yourself feeling motivated to be able to organize and plan and figure out what tools or strategies are going to help with being at a place at the time that you're wanting to be or expected to be.
Mhm.
And that I think is the hope with medication, is that it does help manage some of those symptoms. And then
Mhm.
I do hear that you've been with your planner continuing to use it because you know that that's what's worked for you. And so you
Mhm.
continue to stick to what you know works, rather
Mhm.
than trying to reinvent the wheel. I think also what you brought up was you're learning how to work with the symptoms. You don't
Mhm.
let them define you. And I
Mhm.
think that's really important because so much of the stigma around ADHD is, oh, you're different.
Mhm.
Oh, then you have a learning disability, and that can feel really isolating, and that
Mhm.
can make you feel really lonely, and nobody wants to be like the odd one out.
Mhm.
And so when you embrace that, okay, I'm working with my brain,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that the symptoms are going to go away, but you're learning how to work with it. And I think
Mhm.
that that's really inspiring. And I'm so glad that you've been able to be on this journey to be able to get to where you are.
Thank you. Yeah,
Of
it's been a
course.
journey for sure. And once I got off the medication, that kind of turned it into like a different kind of understanding of myself because it was then like employing all of those tools while not being medicated, while
Yeah.
also like adding in new ways that I take care of myself. Like just like for example, like my nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed certain things that it would be difficult to focus if I ate like a bready or grainy carb in the middle of the day or like in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like really hard for me to do my work. So I would change my diet too based off of how I would feel. Like if I felt more clear eating like eggs and like protein
Mm-hmm.
and vegetables in the morning, then I would do that. So then that way I could continue to be productive throughout the day or
Yeah.
like in those early hours.
I
Um,
appreciate how you put your air quotes around productive.
Productive. Yeah, because then I wanted to add an aside where it's like some days I feel like I really just need to rest, and
Yeah,
that is also productive.
of
So,
course.
but yeah, being able to, I think I'm like grateful for the experience on medication with certain things that happened. Like I was able to figure out, I guess, with the dosage,
Mm-hmm.
I started to feel like something was wrong, like with my heart.
Mm.
And I was like, this doesn't feel normal. I actually feel like I'm on crack or something. Like I felt like
Mm.
totally whacked out. And
Yeah.
so I then took it upon myself to be like, I don't think this is normal, so I'm gonna go tell my doctor. And then they dropped it for me and maybe switched brands. And so I ended up switching a bunch of brands and like generic options for medication.
Mm-hmm.
And I found something that worked really well for me
Yeah.
at the time that I was taking it. So sometimes it does just take trial and error and understanding how it works, like for your own body.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then ultimately I made the decision that I didn't want to be on it anymore. But,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not like a decision for everyone. I'm not saying that you should make that decision for yourself, but that was
Mm-hmm.
just the decision that I came to for me after I think I was on it for like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I've been off for like 6.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been managing my symptoms and just getting to know myself better without it for the last 6.5 years, which has been
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think, like you said, everyone's journeys with medication is different, and what works for one person may be different for another. And it goes back to just how unique our bodies are.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I'm hearing that for you. You were able to talk to your doctors and let them know what are the side effects that are happening with this medication, with this specific dosage. It is through trial and error, which is the hardest part, I
Yeah.
think. But on that journey, I hear that you got to a point where you found a dosage and a specific medication or brand that worked for you during a time that you felt like it would be helpful. And
Hmm.
now that you made a decision to get off of it, which I think also it is a personal choice. Like certain people take medication on certain days or
Hmm.
during certain seasons of one's life.
Hmm.
And that makes me think about the strategies that you're implementing and getting to know your body, yourself, your brain. You brought up being intentional with your nutrition, noticing how food affects you. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that's led you to the business you have now. So, as we get closer to wrapping up our episode, I'd love to hear about the work that you do as a health coach. I'm curious about that.
Yeah. That's another huge reason why I'm so grateful for just my experience and my life and what I've been aware to recognize.
Mm-hmm.
So the ADHD, kind of being aware of my tendencies just in general, and then leading me on this path of how can I take care of myself
Yeah.
better and how can because I still had this drive. I feel like maybe when I was younger, I didn't necessarily have a drive, or maybe it just didn't appear, I didn't nurture it well enough to like succeed in any particular way.
Yeah,
So that could also be, part of the equation.
for sure.
But as I start to get to know myself better and develop this drive for personal growth and development, it's had me feel like I want to become, like, how can I become the best person that I can be, no matter what,
Yeah.
no matter what I'm experiencing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be like chipper and on top of it every single day. But just being there for myself and understanding the experiences that I'm having. And this big part of my life of living with ADD, I'd say like untreated, but it's not untreated because I'm treating it for myself with
Mm-hmm.
my routine and nutrition and exercise really helps me narrow my focus too.
Yeah.
But all of these different ways of getting to know my body better just led me toward this path of helping other people do the same thing no matter if you have ADHD or not. I think it's really important for people to really get to know themselves in their own unique ways,
Yeah.
to be able to help themselves grow if that's the path that you choose of personal growth and
Mm-hmm.
improving in certain ways, whether it's like communication in your career or with your family or communication with yourself,
Mm.
really,
Yeah.
because I feel that self-talk, especially, is such a big part of how we take care of ourselves and what we then choose to do, like our actions and our behavior from that, like how we think and talk to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I love helping empower people to look within and seeing like parallels within their health and how they can help themselves feel better, feel more clear, get more sleep, and like what those obstacles are and removing them.
Yeah, that's so great. I'm really happy to hear how your journey with trying to take care of yourself, being intentional with both your mental and physical well being, has led you to feel passionate to help others who are also interested in wanting to improve and be on a journey with personal growth in whatever ways that they see fit for their own journeys.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's really awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing that. That's the framework that you come from because I totally agree with you. That self talk is super important. It's the relationship that we have with ourselves is the most important one, and
Hmm.
then the better we have a relationship with ourselves, it spills into how we interact with others too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here,
Thank
and for
you. Thank you for
sharing
having
about your journey. Yeah, definitely. And
me.
for sharing about the work that you do. What is the best way for people to contact you?
I'd say Instagram is probably the best way for people to contact me.
Okay.
Although my name is pretty much the same across all social media.
Hmm.
But it's Emily Nader Fit. I don't want to be like at Instagram.com, but that's not real. Um, so yeah, you can email me. It's the same thing, emilynaderfit@gmail.com,
Okay.
or find me on Instagram at Emily Nader Fit.
Okay, awesome. And I'll make sure to include your links in the show notes so that people can contact you that way too.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode on Latine ADHD. Emily reminds us that ADHD doesn't go away, but you can learn how to work with your brains and care for yourselves in ways that feel good and realistic. If you'd like to connect with Emily, you can find her on Instagram at Emily Nader Fit. I'll also have her links in the show notes. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone, a friend, or leave a review. It helps this podcast reach more people in our community. And as always, remember, you don't have to figure out ADHD alone.